What is up, everybody? I am Blue Toshi, or going by Blue. This is Blu Node, where we talk about everything Bitcoin, culture eternal, and crypto in general, and just life in general. So with me today, I'm super excited. We planned this for a couple weeks, and I've been waiting for this one. But with me is Melina G, or as you know her, Girl in the Verse. Melina, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I was like super pumped to be here. I'm so happy we get to do this together. Finally.
Yeah, it's fun. You know, any friend of Stephen Miller is a friend of mine. So he was telling me, he's like, hey, have you checked out Melina's stuff? Like, she's got really good content. She posts, she's positive, which, you know, in this space, being positive is hard. It's really hard to stay positive when there are so many grifters and you want to like try and save everybody, but you can't save everybody. You just got to like focus on the people who are building for real and doing the good stuff. So, and you're one of those. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really, I like to say, and I've been doing this for a really long time, but I've been trying to talk about this more, which is building your personal brand and why that's super important. And I think, for the longest time, even in terms of like my journey, I know we'll get into that, but everything I've tried to do in terms of being in this space was always finding a way where it made sense for me, how to be consistent. And that meant just being myself. And so I'd like to say I'm a super positive person. Sometimes, I'm a bit negative. That's what my husband would tell you.
Well,
but I'm generally a positive person, and I think for me anyway, the crypto space is such a weird place
yeah.
to be in. And I feel like once you enter this space, if you haven't figured out that we're just a bunch of weirdos on the internet and that we should be poking fun at each other, then I don't think you've read the room. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. And, in your defense, like we all need, even positive people, you need your space in your downtime or your alone time to process that stuff, or it will come out kind of in your public brand or public persona is negative. And like I said, I battle with it all the time because like some of these grifters, I just want to point out like, everybody, like, look, for the past 3 years, they have been doing this. Here is this project. Here is this. Here is this. But, again, it's like personal brand aside, just as a human, where do you spend your energy? You know what I mean? And that's maybe that's one of life's battles, but to me, that's a tough one because grifters, I just want to like try and bury them all. But, that I think that's the Robin Hood complex. You know what I mean?
It's too hard, and then you have to think about what you're trying to do here, and if it's to be a caller like that, then make it your thing. Like I love Zach XBT for that reason, right? Like we know what he does.
Yeah.
He does the research, he investigates, like and I think that's a hard thing for people to understand. What I've noticed in this space is people see one guy doing it really well and they all want to do the same thing thinking they're going to get the same results, right? And that doesn't work. All you got to do is go on TikTok and see 10,000 other people doing the same thing. So you really have to figure out why you're here, what you want to do and how you want to show up. And I think for a lot of people, the easy answer is I want to make money, and then they come in and they try to make a persona and like you kind of see it. Like I've been here for 7 years now. A lot of the creators I started teaching and coaching are now these big live streamers, and everyone hates them, right? Oh, they're grifters, they're this, they're that. But it's like it just depends how long you've been in the space and who you know, and you have to kind of make time to understand what you're getting yourself involved in, right? And we'll talk about my journey, but before you trust someone on the internet, you kind of got to spend time with them.
Right.
So like I'm with you. Like I would love to call out all the grifters, but at some point like we'd be spending so much of our time doing that. It just really depends what you want to be doing. But of course, like advocacy and being here for the right reasons are super important.
That's interesting. So you said you've been doing this, promoting your personal brand, interviewing people on socials for the last 7 years. Where like,
Yeah, for crypto specifically. Yeah.
really, God, it's funny we haven't really run across each other. Is X your main platform or no, not at all?
It is. It is. X is my main platform, but I would say that community who resonates with me the most, like who I tend to see like in the streets and whatnot, would be Instagram and TikTok.
Okay. So, okay.
So I'm a bit all over the place, but
Yeah, Aaron Redwing and I had a great conversation just a few days ago about we got into the algorithms pretty heavy. And X is an interesting one because obviously this is where, for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and probably some other chains, this is where I think the smartest people are in this space, the thought leaders, and this is putting all the grifters aside. Like this to me is where the smartest people are. But that said, obviously we've seen a lot of change of hands of X. The algorithm has definitely gotten more like bigger picture. Obviously when Elon partnered with Trump, it became like all of a sudden we were getting, whether you subscribed or not, feeds from all these different things that, people wanted us to see. And it was definitely like all the platforms do it. I mean, Facebook does it in a very crappy, insidious way. Instagram has their own brand of it. TikTok does too. But is this new evolution of X, is it a good thing? And is this the best place for us to be?
so I've been in social media for like all my life. I really am that last millennial who grew up understanding that social media was going to change the game for a lot of
Right.
us. Um, I'm actually inclined to say Twitter might not be the last place we all end up in. I think crypto Twitter is a niche within a
For sure.
niche. If you look at some of the biggest influencers who talk about crypto, they're not on Twitter. They're not on Twitter Spaces. They're not coming to the crypto conferences and they're not hanging out with us at the parties. So I think it's interesting to see us in this little niche within a bigger niche. And that I think for me anyway, when I first entered crypto, I didn't know about this part of the world. I kind of like dived into it as I was doing research, but in all honesty, some of the biggest creators are not on crypto Twitter.
No, I would agree. And I did not say the biggest. I said the smartest. I think as much as the,
Well, I don't know.
do you
I
really
actually
think,
don't
okay,
know
do you
because
really think these huge influencers on the other channels? Because at some point that turns into big money and that's a big business. If you have a ton of followers and you can get people to buy this meme coin or this shit coin or this PFP collection or this layer 2 on ETH, you basically have the keys to print money. Now you're not going to make a lot of friends, but like give me some names of people who are big influencers who are actually in other platforms who are actually good for the space. Like to me, it's that's a fine line.
So, look, I don't consider them influencers. I consider them people who have been studying stocks and the market for
Okay,
decades.
some
So,
more
I'm talking
traders.
about like real guys in suits. Like, I'm not talking about
Got
your
it.
typical KOL on TikTok. Like,
Got it.
here are the next top 5 memes to buy in. Tomorrow, you're going to be a millionaire. Um, I'm talking about like real YouTube shows where they've got years
Got
and
it.
decades of experience. That's how I kind of entered the space, right? I started watching these guys, but only later on realized some of the movers, like you're saying, some of the smart guys, they are on crypto Twitter. But if you're looking for like a real resource, it's interesting. So I was on a show a couple of weeks ago in Canada here, and they wanted to interview me, like, what's it like, being in crypto and whatnot. And, one of the first questions they asked me was like, where would you recommend we go learn? I can't tell people to come on crypto Twitter. Like, we don't have like a
Yeah,
site where it's
you're
like,
right.
hey, here's all the lingo, here's all the info, here's the
Yeah.
dictionary. Hey, jump on this space. Like, we're 20 years ahead of the
Yeah.
Joe on the
You
street.
could
So
easily get wrecked just by like if you FOMO, if someone's pitching something, you and I both know like, oh, this is so and so pitching this. This is like I'm
yeah.
not touching this. We've already gone through so many FOMO FUD cycles that we have very good thick armor. Sometimes we get caught off guard, but usually we're pretty smart about it because we've gotten our asses kicked so many times. But you're saying a new person to crypto Twitter, I totally agree with. If they went into a spaces, they'd be like, because half the time we're just joking around, like
Then they'd
almost
leave.
ADHD. Yeah, they would be
Exactly.
confused
They would leave.
unless they had like a Sherpa, like one of us, to be like, here you follow these three people, but even then they might shit talk. So you're saying YouTube is safer because it's a polished show and it's a trusted source that you know that you could just be like, hey, start watching these. Like in the early days, it was Andreas Antonopoulos or Trace Mayer, right? With the 7 network effects of Bitcoin. Like that's what I cut my teeth on. But you're saying it's a way safer way to introduce people. Because there's more guardrails. It's not two-way, it's more one-way. Like this is a show you can see to learn.
It's as easy as like one of my favorite guys right now is Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO. You know, he just had Kathy Wood, he had Kevin O'Leary. And the reason why I say these names is because it's a lot easier for a normie to go watch a show like that, hearing from like the biggest shark ever talk about Bitcoin and crypto and how he's buying why he's buying digital assets, right? So that's kind of where I'm at,
Right.
but also and I'll explain to you too, like how I've thought about this over the years, because even 7 years ago, we're talking like Gary Vaynerchuk saying buy NFTs.
Yeah.
We're talking like all 2021. That was like already 6, 7 years ago. Um, we had all this craze, and even I would say 6, 7 years ago we were all on Clubhouse, and then we made our way to Twitter, right? So it's changed so much, and I would even argue that today it's changing again. Like what I saw 7 years ago, even the people that were here are no longer here. So it has time to change again. That's why for me the easiest answer is crypto Twitter might die one day and we're going to be somewhere else. But then again, we have to figure out what that's going to look like for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like even doing a show like this, for so many, they got so comfortable being in their pajamas on a Twitter space. But let's be real, like
Yeah.
that's not a, for me anyway, that's not a show.
How
You're
have
not
you
like,
seen crypto Twitter? Because I agree with you, it's changing a ton, and maybe the election was that inflection point for us. In this summer, I feel like after Vegas, now that Vegas is in May, everybody, I've got kids and they're home from school, so you just like. I almost give myself permission like I did in the old days when I was learning about Bitcoin. Because once you go down the rabbit hole, you can't stop. But I would always give myself permission for a couple months just to take a break. And that's what I did in June. And it was the best thing I ever did because it's like having a TV. Like if you have a show on TV, you're not producing 12 months of the year, you're producing 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And the rest you're recharging, you're learning, you're kind of
mhm.
getting touch grass personal time and obviously family and lifetime. How do you think Twitter has changed recently? And is it for the better or for the worse?
I don't know yet because we've got all this info-fi, social-fi. Like now you've just got people just tweeting random stuff to get points. Um, but what it's changed for me anyway is that I actually get to monetize. I think a lot of people don't realize this, but in Canada, I could never make $1 off of TikTok. So for me, I say this because people hate Elon Musk, but I'm like, listen, he allowed me to finally get monetized. So I would say, first of all, a year ago, we weren't even monetizing. Now we do. So there's that
Okay.
option. Now you've got InfoFi, you've got a ton of people building within Twitter, which is great. So you've got now people wanting to tweet insightful things so that they can start making a couple of extra dollars. The only difference I'm seeing now is that the ones who've stayed on crypto Twitter up until now will probably still stay here, but we're seeing like a whole new influx of like newbies coming in just randomly, And so that's been interesting for me. But yeah, I would say like 7 years ago, I just felt like there were 10,000 spaces a day. There are way less now. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, I feel like just 5 years ago, I would spend my day listening to shows that were, very redundant. Now I feel like, to your point, people are either taking a break, they're coming back, they're not around anymore. There's not as many shows. Um, yeah, what else can I say? I also think like founders are not online as we used to see them. They're more, they're working, they're grinding, they're doing their thing. And yeah, this summer has been quite quiet. I don't know what else I'm seeing in terms of being different. I gladly welcome a new platform for us, is what I mean.
Yeah,
Like I think it's gonna be okay.
I would agree with you. I know you're a multi-chain person. It sounds like I'm more Bitcoin than anything, but I was in the ETH NFTs at a CryptoPunk and love that space. I will buy on-chain art there, but for the most part, Ordinals on-chain, that philosophy and everything that Casey and Raf and the team built, like
Yeah.
to me that is such a great eternal not only store of art but just store of information, right? So but ETH can do that too. They just have smaller constraints on the chain. But ETH is an interesting, like I would never count that out. Like, where's your attention right now in the space before we kind of go back into history, because I want to hear about this.
My intention right now is taking profit. I say that because um this is my second official bull run,
Got it.
and we're currently at the end of this bull cycle. And so right now my attention is, so what I did a couple of weeks ago is that I went looking at all my wallets. I kind of consolidated things. I took notes. I finally did what I said I was going to do last cycle, which is write down the numbers I wanted. I'm mentally preparing because I actually think this is a mental game of like, if I see things pop up in the next 2, 3 weeks, I'm going to take profit. So I think this time around, I'm not marrying my bag. So that's what I'm actually focused
Good
on.
for you.
I'm definitely multi-chain because I started out on Ethereum. But of course, my focus is always Bitcoin. But I think it's unrealistic to think that everything will happen on the mother chain or that all the normies are going to come to the mother
Right.
chain. I think, I'm looking at Sui. I think they have a great ecosystem. I think the Sui play is going to kick ass. I'm a little biased. I got in early, but I also went to Dubai, and I think the guys behind Meta are not kidding around. And I actually think they will be the next like underdog in the next cycle. So I'm looking at Sui, I'm looking at these alts. And I hate to say it, but XRP, man, like we got to talk about XRP. If you're on
Uh,
social media and yeah, see, I know, Blue, but I like to say that XRP, they have the best marketing.
well, and
So,
they're
you
very
know,
tied in with what people don't know is they have been lobbying in DC, which sadly in a very capitalist
exactly.
society that absolutely works. Like, I guess for me with XRP is there's how many tokens are there? Like 100 billion. There's a lot of them. They're basically like used as gas. Why does XRP, why would I ever use that as a store of value?
Exactly. I mean, look, every time I create a video about Bitcoin on TikTok, I just get the XRP army coming at me like why XRP is better, right? So we are also at the stage where it's going to be very hard to convince people who have been on XRP waiting for their 10x pump for the last 10 years why that's never going to happen. And I made peace with like I'm not going to convince the XRP maxis about this, but what I'm saying is, it would be foolish for all of us right now to not be looking at what XRP is trying to achieve. And what I mean by that, and I've said this on many Bitcoin spaces, you got to look at how they have been able to attract retail. It would be foolish for anyone wearing a marketing hat
They have
or
created
anyone
quite an
trying
army. I agree.
to attract the masses to not look at what they've been able to accomplish. Is it crappy? Yes. Is it going to be the next Bitcoin? No. Is it going to be the government's coin? Probably not, and maybe we're wrong too. Like I'm also okay with like in the next 5 years, people taking this clip and being like, she was wrong. Um, but I think it would be foolish to not be looking. I'm not saying I'm buying XRP. I'm just saying like you can't you can't not look at what's going on. I'm trying not to be tunnel vision. I'm trying to look at everything.
100%.
Um, and so I am looking at XRP because it's just gaining a momentum that I just didn't think I would see this cycle.
Yeah,
I
no,
really didn't.
there's definitely an army. I guess when I put people's feet to the fire and ask like what is the use case, because the use case was always this like simple global banking transaction token, and you're saying, dude, simplify what you're thinking about. It's the marketing and it's the retail army. And to me,
Yeah.
then I put that in meme coin land. If there's not utility, or it doesn't have a narrative like Bitcoin, like, digital gold or whatever. I mean, you don't have to buy that narrative, but enough people believe. And like you said, if you have a big enough army, if enough people believe in something, then and they want to hold it, its value goes up. It's that simple. But that does sound a little meme coiny, but maybe Bitcoin crosses the same thing. It's just how many people believe in it. But you said something interesting before. You said we're at the top of this current cycle.
Oh yeah.
What
This is it.
What cycle do you think we're at the top of? Of Bitcoin, of ordinals, of XRP, of alts? Because that's
Oh, I think ordinals are, I don't think we're going to see an ordinal season in the next, I think that's next year. I don't see it happening for 2025. I think, honestly, I was telling people November, I think we see Bitcoin all-time high again, if we're looking at the 200,000 range. I see the same for ETH. I actually, as I was looking at charts last night, I think they might actually go hand in hand together now. I'm not sure. But Ethereum's gonna have its cycle right now. I think people who are like, no, Ethereum's done. I don't think so. I think there's still room for ETH to go to 4K.
well, remember, ETH already
But
peaked at 44, 4,800. So 4K is very reasonable because what are we at, 37 now? So I could definitely see that. And
is it going to 10K? I don't think so. I know people get mad at me, but listen, I don't like if it's at 6K, I'm probably gonna take profit. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like I want people, we're so focused on these numbers on the timeline, like Bitcoin 200K, ETH 10K. It's like if ETH goes to 6,000, I'm gonna start selling. This is the first time in 7 years that I'm comfortable saying this out loud because I used to feel so much pressure to be a part of a
oh yeah,
community. But you know what I
it's
mean?
never
So,
bad to take profits, but I guess that's why I really want to drill down and discern, because you really think so. You think Bitcoin will peak in November, with all the institutions?
I don't see us going to 2026 and we're still like, I don't see that.
So with all the sovereign, with all the nations, all the reserves, all the pension funds haven't even gotten in yet, and all the companies with their treasuries, you're saying it will still be a slow adoption, and there'll be a local peak in 26, or sorry, in the end of 25. Generally with halvings, like what is it, like 18 months after the halving, maybe 2 years. That's generally top of cycle, because different crypto, I feel like, has different cycles. And a lot of times when the cycles retreat, they tend to now go in to Bitcoin, especially as it's integrating, and ETH, into the financial system. But I guess my question for you then is,
People don't have money right now.
where
Bro.
is your, well, some do, some don't, but where's your, when you pull out of the market, then let's say you take profits, what's your piggy bank? What is your base asset? Is it fiat?
My base asset is always Bitcoin.
Okay. Then we're on the same page here. Okay.
Yeah, no. My base asset. What I mean by this is because everyone right now is saying, "Oh, we're gonna see a top in March." I think March is way too late in the game. I think if by November we don't see some numbers go up, that's it. And then, because everyone's constantly like, "Oh, once Bitcoin hits, alt season is coming." But Like, I don't see that this time around. I don't see it actually play out the way we've been seeing it play out. I was even surprised to see Ethereum do those numbers a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh my God. I was thinking more September we would see alt season start, but you're starting to already see it. So, and again, my thing right now, and I've said this on so many shows, when Bitcoin hit $120,000, it didn't affect anyone. Ask any normie right now. But everyone called me when Bitcoin hit 100,000. And people are still under the impression that we're starting the bull cycle. The bull cycle's been here. Bitcoin hitting 100,000 was, part of the plan. That's what we were waiting for, for a couple of years now. So I just want people, and I could be completely wrong. All I'm saying is, Bitcoin hitting $100,000 was a big deal. And, I think people forget, we were at 60,000.
Well, retail hasn't, they never came back. They got burned in whatever, I don't remember the last cycle. That was probably 2021, but they all got burned. A lot of people came in, some stuck around and tried to learn about it, but most people got burned, and mainstream media has not been covering since it did its last all-time high when it ripped through, 100 and beyond. Mainstream media really isn't covering it again yet. Like, I'm getting some old friends whispering this whole next phase is all institutions, it's family, it's family businesses, it's VCs, it's Wall Street. Like, this thing that sucks is, like, we who were early, we front ran Wall Street, we front ran Silicon Valley, like the places that always have insider takes where we simply can't get in on these deals. As the All In podcast says, wetting your beak on. I'm like, well, shit, you billionaires are talking. Like, we never got in, but we who had conviction early beat most of Silicon Valley and Wall Street to it. But the thing that sucks is our neighbors and our normie friends got burned 4 years ago, and they haven't really come back. And now the institutions are the one pumping it. They're making Bitcoin normalized. But my only argument is, like, Bitcoin's going to ebb and flow and go up and down. But you answered the question that's most important to me, that my thesis is my store of value now is Bitcoin. It's not fiat. Obviously I've got stocks and bonds and retirement accounts from old corporations I worked in, but Bitcoin to me is the underlying asset. It will be volatile. It'll go up and down. But if you're saying it's going to peak at the end of 25 and 26 is a lull year, as the sovereigns and institutions gear up to get on board, I think it's going to keep just being volatile, but being volatile slowly going up, because now that the accounting has changed, at least in the United States, for corporations to get it, like Microsoft voted it down at the end of last year. As younger people come on that board, and it's not the CEO of like Bank of America, it's not all old boomers like Disney and old banks, they're going to vote yes on that, because if you have a $500 billion treasury like Apple or Microsoft, and you're not in Bitcoin and probably some ETH, you are downright irresponsible and borderline stupid. Because if you put 10% of your 500 billion, where you put 50 billion in, and you're one of the early corporations to do that, you're literally not going to have to make iPhones anymore, and that money will grow faster because you're just earlier to that game. So to me, Bitcoin is base layer 0. Ethereum has a lot of use cases. I like Ethereum. They were the first in the whole art market, in the on-chain art market, and the CryptoPunk community is keeping that flame lit, and so is Art Blocks and all that stuff. But, if you're in fiat or you're getting out of crypto altogether, then to me, that's definitely an L.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, look, even when I'm giving you these timelines, for me, it's also because I'm looking at my alts and like the alt season, right? Bitcoin will do I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to go back to 60,000. I think that's very unrealistic. It probably will stay choppy, but I mean, if we're ready to see like a new high, because we're all waiting right now. We're like, 117, 113. I think by November we should see a new high. I think anyway.
Yeah, I think it's going to keep it's going to keep going up. But again, I stopped looking at day-to-day prices, hoping it's going to do this or that, because if you literally, if you go to bed on January 1st every year and wake up the next year, January 1st, like it's a straight line up only, right? So for me, it's like we have finally in this world, it's the first time we've ever found an asset where, you work hard, and I want to hear about your past and how you're in the news and stuff and how you transitioned to this, but you've worked super hard. You've built a great brand. You've got great takes online. That hard work and energy turns to money. Now that money literally can be planted and grow by putting it into Bitcoin, right? And maybe if you time it right, Ethereum and some of the other ones, whereas before you had to put it in fiat and maybe buy bonds or buy stocks. But the problem with stocks is, and bonds, every either 5 years or 20 years, you never know what it's going to be. The stock market crashes, resets, and depending on when you came in, you get wrecked. You know what I mean? And maybe the same could happen to Bitcoin, but this is the first time where our energy and the work and blood and sweat and tears that we put into what we do and our energy into life now can grow when we put it into something. And it's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I would even say and add to that is that at least now we have options. I think like what you were saying before, we weren't part of those big meetings with all these big CEOs
Right.
and stuff. And now
Davos.
what I love about, right? Like, yeah, exactly. I wasn't on Wall Street. I wasn't in Silicon Valley. Nobody was whispering in my ear. So, I love this for me anyway. It looks like opportunity, and it just looks like for once anyway, people have access to something that like nobody can truly control. So that's what I love about it, right?
Absolutely. So let's rewind, which is where I was going to start,
Yeah.
but this got into a nice, exciting conversation about the present, which is fun too. So you used to be a newscaster. So just tell me about, and without doxing, like where you're from, kind of where you came up and how you finally entered crypto and decided to make this your full-time reality.
Yeah, I really enjoy my story and I love repeating it and I love like remembering it. Because I think it's super relatable. And so here's the story. Um, so I grew up in Canada. I grew up in the French part of Canada. So I'm here in Montreal. Um, come from an Italian family, but I was born here. And growing up as a young girl, you're just told what you can't do,
Right.
And so quickly I was not like, my parents, the typical thing, like, get a good job, get good grades,
Right.
and you're going to be set for life, and you're going to work 45 years, you're going to retire at 65 years old, and
Right.
all this
Blah,
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 blah, blah.
blah.
Exactly. And I was like a loud kid in school, and my teachers, I remember this because my teachers would constantly call my parents like, your daughter is talking to everyone, like we can't get her to be quiet. And my mom would be like, the teacher's saying this and that. Um and constantly when you're in high school, it's like, well, where are you going to go? What are you going to study? What do you want to be when you
Right.
grow up? And I just truly didn't know. And
Which by the way is fine. Like
I
it's
know.
fine. I didn't either. And those questions I thought were dumb, be like, I'm a kid and I'm going to enjoy being a kid. And you know what? Whatever I do in this world, I'm going to be good at it because I'm a passionate person. And you know what? I have confidence in and believe in myself. And I'm going to find a fit for me, not what you want me to be,
Exactly. And so I went to college and I was studying linguistics. I really wanted to translate because I loved traveling. I was lucky. My mom used to take us everywhere, my parents. And so I really enjoyed traveling, but what I realized like I'd go to certain countries and I didn't understand the language. So I studied Spanish. I studied in Italy. I even did like a year of Mandarin. And all this to say is I was studying linguistics. And one day my teacher comes to me and was like, like I think this is gonna be boring for you. Like you can't just translate texts and books all day. Like you love talking to, like you
Right.
should do something talking to
You're
people.
too
And I was like, I
social.
don't
Yeah.
know. Like, and everyone was telling me you should be a teacher, but I didn't like kids. I was like, teaching? No, I don't like,
Well,
all this
and
to
with
say,
teaching too, like the autonomy you would have to impart real life lessons, like not that it can't be done. My kids have had great teachers and so did I, but it's progressively getting
Yeah.
harder, and
Yeah.
what you can and can't say and what you get in trouble for and don't get in trouble for. Like, some of it's probably good laws and some of them are just absolutely absurd. Like the public school system here,
Exactly.
we're in a great public school system, but there's also, I almost have to walk away because if I really dig in, I'm like, I would just be fighting them all the time on the waste of money
Totally.
and all that stuff. So anyway, please continue.
Yeah, so all this to say is one day it's like midterms, I'm studying for exams, I'm in the library and I see this like school newspaper and they're like, "Hey, we're looking for people to write and you're going to get all these credits." And the one thing, like I really hated high school because I was in this private school where you had to get the good grades. And my parents worked so hard to get me in this
Right, right.
school. And when you're in private school, it's all about your grades, it's all about where you're going next, and it's all about becoming a doctor or a lawyer, type of thing. So
It's always the future. It's never the present, right?
no. And I didn't have like drama class, theater class. I didn't have this. So went to school, did the high math, high science and all this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm in college and I'm seeing, "Oh, I could get credited. Like this is interesting. I want to finish college quicker." That was my thought. It wasn't about being in the newspaper. So all this to say is started writing for the school newspaper for extra credit. Then became an editor and then yada yada, went to uni and then did journalism. And even then, and this is what I want people to realize is like, even when I was studying to be a reporter, everyone around me was like, "You'll never make it. Only 5% make it. You'll never be on TV. You'll never do it. You'll never, like, how could you do this? Who are you? Blah, blah." Always instilling doubt. And it's only now in like my later years that I'm like, it's because people just weren't ready and didn't want to see you change and grow up into this person that you were ready to become. But anyways, all this to say is like had no support. My parents, of course, were very supportive, but we're like, "What the F are you doing?
Right.
Like, you're gonna go work in television, like, all this thing." So anyway, finally get the gig. Worked so hard. I can't tell you how many years I worked for free, how many years I gave coffee to the local news
Right.
anchors and like all like the Devil Wears Prada type of shit. Like all those movies is literally
Oh
how I grew
God.
up living, like working for free. So did that for a long time. Finally got the gig. Finally worked as a TV reporter. I worked in French and in English and I traveled a lot. So I traveled within this country. I did a lot of like political I did a little like I did political beat. I did a lot of news though, like a lot of 6 o'clock news. That was really my beat, but it was very serious. And as you know, like I do funny content now, so
Right.
it's like so different from what I was doing.
Right.
But when you're a news reporter, you're very serious. You don't show your colors. You don't give your opinion. You don't do any of what I do today. So it was so different. And it was funny growing up and being in Canada and like going to the grocery store. People like, "Oh, that's the girl on TV." And like my friends and family were like, "Isn't this weird?" Like we'd go out to eat and I'm not a celebrity, right? I'm just the news reporter. But you build community and you build people wanting to reach out to you. So
Oh.
I was able to get all these skills that I don't think you could if you were just doing like your little 9 to 5. And again, all this to say is to get those breaking news stories, it's really all about the people you meet and know and people trusting you and believing that you deliver that story the right way. And that takes a lot of like guts, trust, and like being in that ecosystem and talking to like a ton
Huh.
of people. So that's what I did for a really,
How
really long
much of
time.
news when you're reporting is told to you from your bosses inside for the spin versus you being able to candidly report the nuance of what really happened? That's why nobody watches the news anymore, because
I love
it's
this
all been
question.
spun. It's all bullshit. Is that fair?
So
Especially in
a hundred
Canada.
percent. So what's happening? So I'll tell you this, when it's interesting because when you first start out and you're working for free or you're trying to get the gig, they want you to go do all the things that they would never actually cover on a 6 o'clock newscast, right? Because they want you, this is your opportunity to get creative and to do a story that you feel like, "Hey, you should cover this." But then, of course, once you get in the system, right? Once you get into the box, whatever station network you're
Right.
working for, then yes, you are then told this is what we're covering. And then throughout my years, right? So at the early stage, you're working for a smaller network, so you get to be a bit more creative. As I got into the bigger networks, um, you are kind of told what you're going to cover. Also, when you're studying to be a reporter, it's because you're for the people,
Of
right?
course.
When you're studying to be a journalist, you're like, I want to go and talk about, this person's story and this advocate, and like you're
100%.
trying to, right? But then when you're in the network, now you're just trying to be in the network. Like now your thought process is, what's the story that's going to get me first on 6 o'clock? So
So
actually,
interestingly, we started
yes,
this whole thing about X and the algorithms. I think now the algorithms are shaping the content people do. And that's why some of the people you taught, I'm sure some of them are great and some of them kind of like they got big and they're like, this is easy money. This is my job. And it's very easy to just turn 16 degrees this way. And you kind of have sold out, and you've sold out, in my opinion, your personal brand, your integrity. People do
yeah.
it all the time, and it's a slippery slope, but it's interesting to say, because I used to work at MTV back in the days when it was actually cool, back when it was
So yeah, exactly.
so I know.
Like
Oh,
you
trust
saw.
me, I know, because you get it's not like you walked in and you get shaped. The algorithm, or as we say in corporate America back in the old days, the culture slowly rounds the stone and rounds the edges of who you are and what you believe. And slowly over time, you are going to be the top reporter, because we were trained to be competitive and play sports and be competitive people. And this is just another step of that. That's why in law, it's so dangerous, because like if a lawyer just wants to win and beat the other lawyer and their person's the guilty one, like that doesn't work either. Right. So it introduces all these complexities and kind of these glitches in society. Right.
Exactly. And then my goal was always to come back to like a major city to work, right? Because that's always your goal. You're
Right.
like, you're going to go into the
Big
regions, you're
market,
going to go into the outskirts.
biggest
Exactly. And then your
demos.
goal is to, exactly. And so when I finally made it to the city, COVID hits. And so then when
Oh,
COVID hit, this was a whole new layer
yeah.
of bullshit. And in Canada, we were, especially like where I live, we had the strictest regulations. Like when I tell you, and this is why it's so crazy when I think about my past life. But we, at some point, people were not allowed to go outside past 6 p.m. So journalists and only a select few people in the country were given a pass, where if you were out and a cop or someone would stop you, you'd have to show this pass saying, I'm allowed to be out. I was one of the lucky ones getting this
That is
pass.
insane.
I'm telling you. And so this was my life like 7 years ago. When was COVID? Like 5, 6 years ago. Um, and my parents, like, so just picture like everyone's like, you're never gonna make it. You're never gonna. And then like I'm on TV and now it's COVID and now everyone's glued to their screen. And this was what got really interesting was then I became a therapist. So not only was I covering news, I had to go and tell a mom, or a daughter why she couldn't see her mom in a hospital.
What
And I had to
from
go and
TV?
like
You're
all these.
saying they were kind of using you to
Well,
like,
because we had to go and get the shots, and then you know how it is. It's very glorified. Then you've got the daughter outside of the hospital crying she can't see her dad before his last words. It's COVID.
oh
He's sick.
God.
They weren't allowing. Exactly. So that's what I mean by I felt like I became a therapist,
So what
right?
happened to, and I want to continue on your journey, but what happened? Because we had this in America, but like Canada and the UK, we won't talk about the UK today,
We
but
were strict.
what the hell happened to Canada? Like,
We're so screwed right now. We're so screwed.
is it basically just kind of Big Brother say this? Like, I heard that if you're a content creator in Canada, you got to be careful what you say, or they'll like rip you off the different socials. Is that accurate?
Well, look, when I left news, and I don't think Americans know this, when I left news, the Canadian government implemented this new law, and they were just blaming Mark Zuckerberg, but basically saying no, no social media is allowed to talk about Canadian news on social networks. So all the networks that have already been trying to figure out how to stay alive,
Right, and not die,
like,
and actually get clips on social media.
we're now given this BS reason as to why even a network is no longer allowed to promote news on social media.
What was behind that? Is that
COVID.
Trudeau, or are there people?
It's still happening. Yes, but it's still, if you go to any network right now in Canada, or like CBC, CTV, like, they're not allowed to talk about news anymore. They're not allowed to put news online. You're no longer allowed on Facebook. And the government was claiming this is because Mark Zuckerberg is not giving us a piece of the pie.
Okay.
Of ads, like, because Facebook makes the money.
Right. And the social
outlet,
networks, definitely. That's why I left MTV. I left in 2008, and I saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, MTV wasn't that cool anymore. I remember the iPhone came out, and they just did a big partnership with like Microsoft Real Player. I'm like, you know what, MTV, you guys lost the memo. Apple is the future. So I created an app development company. We were one of the first to make apps in the whole,
that's amazing,
in the whole world. Yeah. And like, I just looked at my company. I'm like, you guys are dinosaurs. And then they merged with Paramount, and it just became these conglomerates because they didn't know how to be profitable anymore because nobody watches cable. I remember my favorite stories, like when my kids were like 5 and 7 years old, we were in a hotel room, and, part of MTV was Nickelodeon. So we, SpongeBob, like, all my houses and all my vast wealth, joking obviously, but it's all from SpongeBob SquarePants and how that show was watched by literally everybody. And we're in a hotel room. My kids go in, they flip on the TV, and they're like, Dad, what's going on? Did you start SpongeBob? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's this show. Like, we just turned on the TV and it's halfway over. And I'm like, oh, you don't know what TV is. Like, they're born in the 2000s. Like, they only know Netflix on demand and all that stuff. They didn't even know, like, I'm like, hey, you got to show up at
commercials. They're like, we got to wait.
Right. Yeah. And like with YouTube, I do not, like, all their friends' parents are too cheap. I'm like, I'll pay the $20. Like, screw you, YouTube. But I'm not, when they watch YouTube, and they get a lot of good educational stuff on there, and I'm sure a lot of crap, but I don't allow any of those ads to hit them. I don't, when they were little, I didn't need them to be like, hey, Dad, can I get a big wheel green machine and a Barbie Playhouse bakery oven? But now it's just like, I don't need them to be influenced by that. The algorithm already has such a power. And thank God my son just got fed higher and higher level science and math, and my daughter to some degree too. So at least YouTube's aware of their algorithm, whereas in the early days, it was just like the dumbing down of society. Because I heard TikTok, Erin's thesis on TikTok is they by far have the best algorithm to suck you in, find your interest. And she goes, and I was like, wasn't that a bad thing? She goes, no, because I consciously, when I want to, I do like a 20-minute lean in, and the algorithm's great. It feeds me great content. And then I walk away. I was like, good for you. Like, she's aware of it and the algorithm and how manipulative it is. But most people, let's be honest, especially children, they're not aware that they're just getting taken. Oh, the next video. Ooh, maybe the next one will be good.
I'll be honest, my parents don't even realize that they're watching something that's trying to tell them to buy Scott towels. You know what I mean? Like, they're watching a video. You know how like people on social media are like, I'm washing my backyard and with this product, but my parents don't realize that's a placement ad.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm like,
I don't know what you mean. Can you elaborate as I drink my Starbucks coffee? Brought to you by Starbucks.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's like, it's so crazy to me because I'm like, this is a placement ad.
Product placement is so insidious now. Happy Gilmore 2. Everyone's like, well, it's kind of funny. God. And I was like, Happy Gilmore 2, there's a couple good jokes. Pepsi. Oh my God, Subway. Like, and even think about it, but even the bigger picture, the PGA. Because remember, I think the most genius movie in the last 20 or 30 years, and I'm not kidding when I say this, was the Lego movie. They were the first ones to do a branded movie, but that movie was so effing smart, and the social commentary, like go local sports team, like the social commentary was so intelligent with that show. Now everybody's trying to copy them for that irreverence. But to me, that was branding and placement done right. Happy Gilmore 2 was just a paycheck. Adam Sandler getting to bring his two daughters, who are great actresses, and he get to.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, those two girls were his daughters, and I thought they were great. And how awesome is that? I checked. I don't think the boys were his sons, but the girls were his daughters.
But did you?
Go ahead.
Did you notice Bad Bunny's in it? Because people were telling me I didn't notice Bad Bunny was the caddy.
Who I don't even know who Bad Bunny is.
He's a singer from Puerto Rico.
Oh, my wife told me that. Was he? Okay.
You've heard his music.
Yeah,
heard his music.
Got it.
But he's the caddy, and yes. Anyway, all this to say, to go back to my story. So it's COVID. I'm like reporting the news. Then in Canada, they started doing lockdowns, right? And then on Sundays, they started doing everything's going to be closed. No grocery store, no stores. You can't go anywhere. It was like.
How did you get food?
It was the apocalypse. I'm not even like, I wish I was like exaggerating, but I'm truly not. And so I was working 6 days a week and I was off on Sundays. And I'd tell my producer, I can't even grab food. So all this to say, my mom was making food for me because I was working crazy hours. And apart from like going and find a story, it was a lot of like, what is the government going to say today? Because every day the government was speaking to, and you know the production that it takes to record everything. Yep. And so like, I was just in a place where I looked outside and I looked at my life. And this was at a time where all my friends were home. Everyone was home. You know, when everyone had the 2 weeks? Those were the craziest 2 weeks of my life, of covering insane amount of stories. But also, my friends were learning how to make bread. Remember all those bread videos? Here's how to make bread. Yeah. Here's how to. Everyone was learning
and how to
skill.
Dehydrate like, foods was big too, like how to make beef jerky and stuff. But like,
yes,
how do you think this was like a test of countries to see how strict they can make it on their citizens for like lockdown? Or do you think it's more stupidity and just like overreaction and kind of screwing people by not letting them buy their bread and not letting basic commerce happen? This wasn't the Black Plague. I get the first couple weeks we didn't know, but to me, it just seems like it was an insidious trial run of complete governmental bullshit.
It probably was, but I will tell you, and I've told this to all of like everyone around me, when I was like speaking to governments, parliament, when we were going, like, I'll be honest, they were just as freaked out as we were, recording, and like we would, ask questions. Like, we had these health officials come on every night. What's the total? How many died this week? You know what I mean? So there is a part of me that's like, maybe, but also, I also think people were just like, what the hell do we do? Maybe we should lock down. Australia was also pretty strict.
They were, yeah, my niece was there.
You know what I mean?
My niece my sister had to leave in the middle of the night and she barely made it out. But there's a guy, do you know who Intrepid is?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know his story?
No.
Oh my gosh, you got to talk to him. So he is an Australian. He is a big sailor and he has 3 young kids. And I think one or two of them are on the spectrum, like great kids, great family, great wife. So he's in Australia, but he's done a bunch of sailing trips around like the Caribbean and stuff. So he got a boat during COVID. He's sailing around the Caribbean with literally like a 6-month-old, like a 3 and a 5-year-old, like in not a huge boat with his wife. Like,
yeah.
I can't even fathom it. I've sailed before, but like that to me is insane. He's Australian, but he had a Canadian credit card, and Australia, they locked down. He and his family were not allowed home. They had to live on their boat for several months. The government of Ecuador and one other country would not even let them on land. There's finally a country, I can't remember which one, after a couple months on the boat, they finally let them ashore. He had to stay there for over a year. Then I believe he went to a little better country like the next year. Like Australia didn't let him in for like 2 years. It's the, like, you've got to, if for what you know and what you've seen in Canada, like, and what you know about Australia and their crackdowns, you've got to talk to him because he's a big ETH artist. He's a great dude, but the story is just insane how
insane.
ludicrous it got that a citizen with little children was not even allowed back in their own country. They had no way to get home, and he couldn't even use his credit card because it was Canadian. And they're like, we can't you're an Australian with a Canadian credit card and you're in the Caribbean. Like, we can't validate. We have no way to validate you. The credit card is suspended until you can come in. He's like,
it's crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know how he got money, but his story is insane.
So, and this is it. It's like, so I was covering news, and even before I even moved back to my city, I decided, basically I was talking to one of my producers a while back, and I was like, listen, what is it going to take for me to get to the city? You know, they were like, oh, maybe a couple of more years. And I was like, a couple more years,
dangle the carrot, dangle the carrot.
You know, and my whole thought process was, I wanted to be, in all honesty, when I was studying to be a journalist, I wanted to be an international, like, travel, like, Christian Amanpour, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I aspired to be. But we were already in an era where we were all being centralized, and the information was already like, okay, we've got our people in Asia and we don't need you to fly to Asia to get the real story, you know, like, so I then decide I'm going to quit my job and go travel for a year and a half. And when I came back is when I got the job in the city. It just like happened.
Of course, when you walk away, that's when it's so frustrating. Like any corporate job, when you don't get the promotion when you deserve it, you get it when you throw your arms up and say, fuck it, I'm doing something else.
that's
like,
what
this
happened.
doesn't fit my personality, I'm done. And you have to mean it. Then the irony of the universe is like, here it is on a platter, everything you wanted. But by then you're like,
exactly.
No, I've moved on and it feels good.
So when I got home and I was staying on my mom's couch, I was like, I got a job in my city after all these, like, it was insane because it just, I think I also looked more interesting because I took the break. Anyways, all this to say, we can talk about this for years, but so back in the city, get the job. I'm in my city. I'm like, wow, like, I'm going to make money right away. Like, I thought I was just going to chill on my mom's couch and like couch surf, you know? I don't know what I'm doing. So get the job, but then 6 months later, COVID happened. So like, that's kind of my timeline. So then COVID happens, and then I'm like, oh my God, but I just got this job in the city and blah, blah, blah. And another thing I want people to know is, before taking on the job, I was already doing a podcast. I was already interviewing people, like just doing fun stuff while I was traveling. And I told my you know, the last company I worked for, I want to be able to keep doing a show. And they're like, you can't if you work full time for us. So you always got to read the fine print. You always got to look at your contracts, because people don't know this, but journalists are signed to a network, and you're not allowed to do other shit. You're not allowed to go and host a show on the weekend. You got to stick in your network, and you got to be the face of your network.
Right, because you are their brand. You are not your own.
Of course.
You traveled for a year and a half. You started creating your brand. You realized that you were tapping into that fun, curious, exploratory, and non-censorable part of your personality, which is who you were as a child. And they're basically telling you, like, if you want to be CTV or whatever it was, then you're locked in. We're going to pay you a lot of money, but you are our spokesperson. And it sounds like the guardrails had already come off, and you had already
the chains. Yeah. But there was a little loophole, meaning I was just going to be a part-time reporter. But then, like I'm telling you, 6 months later, it was like, Melina, we need you full-time, all hands on deck, because it was COVID. So Again, I was taking a chance by just taking a part-time gig, but I was like, you know what? Let me figure out what I want to do. But it helped me because by being the part-timer, when I was tired of talking about COVID, I would get on my microphone. It wasn't this one at the time, but I would get on my microphone and do a podcast where I would talk about whatever. And I was allowed to still do
Right.
that. And then in that time, I started hosting. This is again like, after year one of COVID, then, events would start calling me, hey, can you host an event? And I would take these little side gigs. Um, and so all this to say is I was, being a reporter, and then COVID happened. And then I was just like questioning my life. Like, how is it that all my friends are at home? I'm working like a dog, literally 6 days a week, my only day off, and I can't even go to the grocery store. It's like dead zone
Right.
all over the city. And my mom's making my meals. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I then decide to quit. I was like, you know what? Like, I don't, this is like after like a year and a half in COVID
Right.
doing reporting. So I was already like 2 years back working, and I was like, I can't do this. Like this, I don't want to do this anymore. Type of, I like woke up and I was like, I want to get 2 weeks off and learn how to make bread. Like, why can't I learn another skill?
Huh.
So get out of that. And then at this point, I'm like, I meet my partner. Now he's my husband, but at the time we're just dating. And he works for the federal government. And he's like, why don't you do like crypto? And I'm like, what's crypto? He's like, oh, I've been buying, Bitcoin for years. I'm like, what the hell is crypto? Like, I had no
Right.
idea. And he was like, yeah, well, you do all these videos. Like, why don't you talk about Bitcoin and like make it interesting? He's like, there's no women here. It fucking sucks.
It's
Like,
true.
and I was like, I don't know what that is. That's for losers. Like, I'm not doing that.
What year was this? 21?
This was like 2020. Like, NFTs were popping off at the end of, no, like end of 2021. Is that normal?
Sounds right.
When were NFTs popping up? End of 21,
20
maybe.
21 was the hottest ether. That's when CryptoPunks they were around since 17,
Exactly.
but that's when they absolutely just ripped. But that's when Bored Apes ripped. I think Azuki was
Yeah.
I think Azuki was
So
21
Bored
as well.
Apes, by the time Bored Apes were out, that's when he was trying to tell me, like, you should get into NFTs. No, no, I digress. He never told me to buy an NFT. He told me never buy that shit,
Yeah.
actually. But the thing was, and this is what gets very interesting because I started writing things out like a diary, and
Uh,
this is why it's so still vivid in my head because I can go back to those notes. At that point, what people didn't realize was people were buying NFTs. Gary Vaynerchuk was going online telling people, you should buy Ethereum. My friend, you should buy Ethereum. Elon Musk was talking about robots. Mark Zuckerberg changed Facebook to Meta, invested millions of dollars to change his company and named it Meta. And people were like, what the hell is
right.
this? All this was happening in 2021. And we end up going to like a party one night, and I'm with the girls, and all the guys are there looking at Bored Apes and they're comparing traits. And I'm like, what the hell are these guys doing? And the girls are like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. They're just doing guy thing. And I'm like, no, I kind of want to know what the hell they're talking.
Yeah.
Like, why are guys talking about monkeys? Like,
Right. It isn't a weird acquired taste. Like getting in NFTs and then getting into traits. Like I was right there, and I was never a big Bored Ape fan, but with Azuki and CryptoPunks, like I loved looking at traits. It was just
yeah,
there's so I don't know if it goes back to like the baseball or football card collecting that guys like to do and
maybe.
looking at the stats on the back, but there was something. And Yuga captured magic in a bottle, right? And everybody's been trying to replicate that since. I think the Penguins with whatever that guy Luca, he's done a pretty good job of
Yeah.
creating a culture. Azuki obviously has gone way up and way down, but And Bored Apes has gone way down too. Like I personally think Yuga's in big trouble. I think the metaverse is, I was a part of that purchase and that was the worst.
Yeah.
That was really the worst mint I've ever seen. But I always thought Bored Apes
Yeah.
were way more cringe, whereas CryptoPunks are more about the art, the community. And really,
Yes, it's
to me,
totally different.
CryptoPunks are the ethos of Ethereum. And I think they
Yeah.
make Ethereum a better, more viable playing product. All early art was on ETH, and you got to give it that credit.
Yeah. Of course. So while all the girls were like not caring about what these guys were doing, that same night, my boyfriend is like, "We're gonna launch NFTs,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "What?" Like, yeah, we're gonna just find an animal, find a silly name, and we're gonna mint this stuff. We're gonna all become millionaires.
Right.
And I was like, "What are they talking about? Like, this is crazy." So and then we come home that night, and my boyfriend is like, "So you're gonna do the marketing, right?" I'm like, "For what?" He's like, "Our new collections. You're not here. We're gonna do NFTs." I'm like, "Marketing about what?" He's like, "Well, go online, like figure out like what do we got to do, like
Yeah.
like
Pump it.
all this stuff." And I'm like, "I really don't care." And we got into fights. Like this is what I mean, okay? Like we were fighting about this because I kept telling him, I was like, "Listen, I cannot market something I don't understand. So if I don't get it, how can I market it?
Right.
How
So
can I
when
be
did
your
the light
social
bulb
media
go off
person?"
then? When did you see
So the light bulb went off. This is why it's interesting. The light bulb went off when he said, "Well, I'm going to do this with my friends." I said, "Good luck." And the light bulb went off when I said, "You know what? Why is he so upset? And like, why? And what the hell's an NFT?" And so I went online and I Googled it, and I started Googling and I went into this rabbit hole. And I like to tell people, in order to become a really good journalist, you have to be a really good researcher. You have to really make sure that your facts are accurate, that you've done your homework, that you put in the work and the hours before you go interview the prime minister. You know what I mean? Like you can't just show up
Right.
there. "So how did you enter crypto?" Like
Right.
that's not how that's not how you get really good, right? And so I put in the hours, and at the time my boyfriend did not know about crypto Twitter. 21, NFTs, punks, apes. He had no clue that people were on Twitter Spaces. But I will tell you this, I was at the that moment in time where people were slowly leaving Clubhouse to get to Twitter.
Right.
So that's when I entered. That's when I figured out crypto Twitter. And the other thing I wanted to tell you, and I know you know this, but people will forget, but people who were on Twitter were either journalists or politicians. Like your average Joe was on Instagram and Facebook. Nobody was on Twitter unless you were a somebody. So I had a Twitter account, a professional Twitter account. I use Twitter every day to get news sources, right? So I get into this like world of crypto Twitter and I'm like, what the F is this? And so anyway,
Twitter's very, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but they have categories, subcategories, subcategories, sub, and I feel like a lot of people have been so sectionalized into one thing where whatever they say is only going to be seen by these little niches. Like I think it's kind of hindering X right now for a much bigger growth story. Like it's the niche you're in, and then it's whatever Elon and the people he wants you to see, like Mike Benz or whatever, to show you that the U.S. government is very inefficient. And I'm not saying I'm not glad that he didn't introduce me to some of these people, because some of it was eye-opening, but part of it is also like he's definitely had a heavy thumb on that algorithm and how we've all been kind of put in different like niche categorical sections.
Probably. It was definitely different at the time when I was
it was definitely different at the time. You used to still be able to sort by recent. You cannot do that anymore. Elon said he'd open it up. You can actually see what the signals are for the algorithm, but you can't change it. You've got Farcaster out there, you've got Noster, you've got these guys who are trying, but Farcaster is way too ETH only. I think that they're having trouble keeping retention up. Noster is so Bitcoin maxi, like, if I'm into ordinals or anything outside of just being a pure Bitcoin maxi, it's, even though they're probably not trying to do it, that's kind of what the network is doing. But those allow you to create clients on top of of the system and create your own algorithm. So it's happening, but I really wish we had a network right now where you could pick and fine tune and tweak your algorithm. And maybe some people are
Yeah.
just sheep and they want to be on Facebook and Insta and just be like, oh, car crash. Oh, hello. Hello.
I think they do
Yeah.
though. I think
A,
they
a lot of
do.
people do. They don't want to think. They don't, you know, but a lot of people didn't do what you and I did. And a lot of the people we know in the space, they're like, hey, how you doing, neighbor? Do you like your job? They're like, I don't know, it's a job. You're like, oh,
Exactly.
I gotta go. You know, like if
Exactly.
you're not gonna like go on offense in your life a little to do the things you want to do, you're going to be living someone else's playbook. And to me,
Of
that's
course.
not okay. And that's what I try. And my kids are like, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. Like I don't want to. And I'm like, entrepreneur is just a word. Like, do you want self autonomy? Do you want to wake up when you want? And do you want to do the things you want to do during the day? Like, yeah. And it's not like I don't have to do my accounting and the boring shit, but you know, usually I get to call my own shots, and that's what being an entrepreneur is. It doesn't mean you have to be super rich. It just means you want to have a say in where you focus your attention and what your destiny is.
Yeah. So at this point, my boyfriend is like, I'm gonna do this with my friends. And then I go on Twitter and I'm starting to learn about spaces and I start going on a few. And like, I could even name names right now, but they're not even around. So listening to some shows, then I was like, I'm gonna request to speak. And at the time, I had my face as my profile picture.
Okay.
And people are like, who is this person? No PFP. Um, and I would come up and I would ask a question and I would, but I will say, I got into the Ethereum algo, to your point. I was straight into the Ethereum
Okay.
algo because I was looking up NFTs. So that was my first like introduction to crypto was NFTs. Um, and I remember vividly, like my husband would come home and I'd be like, we got to buy this NFT. They are going to be building wells in Africa and teaching young women
Mm-hmm.
how to. And he'd be like, this is all bullshit. I'm like, no, I'm going to help the turtles and I want to mint this stuff. And that was me. Like, that's why I'm telling you, Blutoshi, my story is so relevant. Like, I love sharing it.
We've all been
So I
there.
bought every NFT that is now zero.
No,
That's
but so many. You are not the only one. So, I mean, so is your
no, I
husband.
know.
So have I. Like that early ETH season. If someone had a good story and the art was decent, we all had this FOMO of the brain that we just didn't know any better. You really until you get burned a bunch. And honestly, the moment of truth is when you start to, if you don't record your transactions when you do them, when you start to reconcile for your taxes and you're like, oh my God, that like when you're balancing a budget to like 6 decimals on ETH, you're like, just shoot me now. Why did I buy all this shit? I used to have X ETH. Now I have X minus 14 ETH. Like, unless I
Yeah.
got lucky, like I did with like Moonbirds or Azuki and stuff like that, like I would have just gotten wrecked because I minted all this stuff that I didn't want. I just didn't want to miss out. And it turns out the only ones who sustained that for a while were Yuga, Azuki, and then Pudgy Penguins actually kind of created a real thing on the side. And
Now.
obviously CryptoPunks, right? And the
Yeah.
rest went to zero. So you're definitely not alone there. So I got to ask you this before we part ways, like being there's so few females in this space. The ones that there are, there's just awesome women in this space. You, Aaron, I don't know if you know Bix over who's active with the nouns community. Like you guys are just awesome, but there's great guys in this space and there's douchebags and there's a lot of anon. Like what is it like being a woman in this 97% male degen space?
I have to say, I don't think I look at it as, and I don't get as many of those kind of messages that I think a lot of women do. And I think it's because I'm super doxxed. Like, I think, like, I don't get any of these LARPers, like, no one's coming at me. No one's trying to flirt with me when I go to conferences. Um, and I also think it's because truly I come from that world where I talk to people. And I
Right.
think like for a lot of them, they're just nerds. So when they see me walking around with a
Totally.
camera, they actually stay far away from me. So you know what? All the girls should follow, should go to conferences with a big camera and no one's going to come see you.
Yeah, really.
No, I don't know what it is. I will say, at the time, my partner was like, there's no women here. And even when I entered, and I think that's why too, it was so fun for me to mint all these female NFTs. And
Sure.
I honestly, I love my PFP. Like I love my women and weapons. I talk to the founders a lot.
So you found your
They're
crew.
actually
That's
expecting.
awesome. Like you got
I found
burned
my
with a
crew,
lot
but
of bullshit
also
ones, but you found a crew of people. I always say that NFTs or ordinals, whatever you call it, art is the sticky layer of crypto that
exactly.
we never had before. Back in 2017, when Bitcoin would go down, I would just be like alone, be like, Bitcoin's going down. Now it's not, I don't worry about it as much because we have art to talk about. We have coding, we have new ideas.
Yeah.
Like we have this melting pot of just awesomeness. Whereas before it was just like number go up. Yay. Number go down. Sad.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so being a woman, for me anyway, like even when I decided to change my profile picture, because I've built a personal brand and I was like, I knew that that's what I was going to do in crypto because I was like, I just want to be that person who asks
Right.
questions and who is trying to learn. I'm not going to be the Miss Know-It-All, but 7 years later now I get to do this and we get to talk about stuff,
Right.
right? Like whereas 7 years ago I just wanted to listen and learn. And so at the time, for me anyway, for women and weapons, it was like it just resonated, like the whole lore resonated with me, like being a woman, having your weapons. And then I just love the fact that I get to put a profile picture, even like the name Girl in the Verse, that came on really later on when I would again request to speak and men were like, hey bro, like what do you have to say? And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm a girl. And so I wanted to find a way where I could come up with like some fun name where everyone would know I was a girl. Today, I kind of, and it's interesting because we talked about the metaverse. Maybe it's gonna die. I feel like it will come back, but not with the word metaverse. A bit like NFTs. We're like, what are we gonna call them? But I
Right.
think the goggles. I think those are gonna come back. I think eventually, is it tomorrow? I don't know, but I definitely wanted to be this girl in this new verse, in this new ecosystem, however that was going to look like. And yeah, I mean, when I look at my picture, it's so hard for me to change her now. Like even if I were to put a pudgy, because I'm like pudgies are hot right now, I don't feel like that would represent what I've built over the last 7 years. So I've never changed and I can't tell you how many people on Bitcoin are like, when are you going to change it to an ordinal? And I'm like, listen, it's not that I don't believe about art on Bitcoin. I look at my PFP as like the personal brand and I branded her. She's on my merch when I go to conferences. She's on
Right.
my business card. Like I can't switch her now,
Yeah,
So
no, for sure. And you know what? It's a cool dedication to you. They did a good job with it, right? And
she's not
oh,
me.
really?
Yeah, that's the best
Oh,
part.
that's awesome. Yeah, because I like it doesn't look exactly like you, but it does look close enough. But you're right.
She's
Like
badass.
so,
Yeah.
when I was in the ETH days, I've made a bunch of branding faux pas, but you know what? I was also like, you know what? I'm going to be a moving target too. I'm not going to worry about it right now. I was Chicago X forever when I had my CryptoPunk, when I had my Azuki. Loved that time there, but when I came over here, it was Blutoshi, and actually now I just, Blutoshi's the handle, but I just say I'm like it's just blue, like it doesn't need to be necessarily associated with anything. And I just recently updated from the ordinal punk to I took a cue from Stephen Miller and used a bunch of pictures of me to make an AI one, and I did like 30 of them for like $10 on this great site. And finally I found, I'm like, yeah, this is the vibe, like blue. It's got the vibe. And because I kept saying, it kept making me look young, like a 23-year-old swarthy knight. I'm like, dude, put wrinkles on me, make it look like I'm 50 plus. And the funny thing is, then it made me look like I was 80 because,
Yeah.
I probably look younger than my age because I'm very active. So I'm like, okay, like 40. And finally, I think it was like 37, 38. I'm like, oh shit, that's like an AI compliment where I'm like, it gave me the wrinkles. Like, cause I'm like, give experience, show that I've been around the block. I'm not just like a young, fresh, and I was that kid once too, but it took a while. But I just switched this probably 4 months ago, right before Vegas, and I presented at the Inscribing Conference. It was like the worst timing to do anything. But I'm like, you know what? Like at some point you got to go closer to who you are and your persona for your brand. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's funny because even when I picked her. She's from a 10K
Right.
collection, but I picked her on secondary. I felt that she kind of looked like me, but also she was everything I was trying um to represent in terms of being a woman in crypto. She's got her weapon. She looks badass. She's entering this space. And I actually, it's funny because just last night at this Ethereum party that I went to, I was just talking to this guy and he's like, "Do you want to do like an AI version of you?" And I'm like, "I do, but I actually want an AI version of her." Like I would love
Interesting.
if one day she moves, like that's what I would love. And I would love that eventually we didn't even talk about AI, but my next thing in terms of creating content, I want to get to a place where she's moving, she's doing the newscast, or she's like, and it's not me.
Right.
It's like it's my brain. It's me gonna like I'll be typing out the script, but I kind of want it to look like the metaverse, like another person. It doesn't have to be me. But anyway, we'll see. But that was also my thinking even just 5 years ago. It's like, oh my God, in the metaverse, I could have a podcast and she could be the person doing the interviews, you know?
Yeah, I've talked
Um,
about that a lot too. Just Meta obviously had a head start. Nobody really trusts Facebook anymore, but let's be honest,
yeah,
they bought Oculus Rift and that was by far the best VR headset. Zuckerberg put all his eggs in a basket, like you said, changed it to Meta. And we actually, I've got a dev shop and we do a lot of 3D stuff. And we had one of those test units, God, probably 10 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, this is the future. I am a little blown away that it hasn't adopted further because I'm with you. I completely see this show in a 3D space where we're all in Oculus, where if you walk up to me, however you do it with the joysticks or whatever, we can have a conversation and then it carries ambiently. Like it emulates real life, but I'd love to have it in this, instead of this kind of flat 2-dimensional kind of set that we made,
yeah,
have it in a 3-dimensional space where it's like this awesome old kind of faux smoky jazz club, and where we could just have good conversation and you actually can hear the audience and the laughter. Like I used to do comedy in my 20s, and there's nothing better than real-time feedback on what you're doing. Whereas you're a newscaster, that could be tough sometimes because it's like, until you go on the streets, you're like, oh, I am reaching to them. But that's why John Belushi and a lot of those guys kind of drink too much after they go from Saturday Night Live to movies, because they're so used to getting instant feedback on their humor and their serendipitous awesomeness. They go to movies and it's like, okay, that was good. Let's try another just in case. Okay, that's good. Like it just gets so rote. You're like,
exactly.
oh my God, I'm like a show pony, but you don't get that instant feedback.
Exactly. So look, we'll see where the future goes, but it's also interesting because and we didn't really talk about this, but I think even for myself, like in terms of the content I was creating way back when, like I was doing funny news skits, like I would dress up as Frank D. Gods, changing to Solana, changing on another chain, and like
God.
I would make all these funny skits about a lot of these people because I was like, this is ridiculous. And also what I also realized was like, I worked in news. The news cycle doesn't sleep. Crypto is like on steroids. Like we get news every minute. And
Crypto
so
is on steroids. Yeah.
it's on steroids. So I at first thought I'm going to be the crypto news girl. And I was like, I'm going to burn out. That's exactly why I left the other place. So I I mean, I was doing the news thing. It was once a week. I would do a recap of what happened during the week. But this is like at a time in 21 where things were moving fast. So I did that like steadily for like over a year, then got a gig at Rug Radio, and then started my journey and creating all this content. And now I would say I kind of pivoted to where now my focus is reaching the normies. So at first I felt like I was trying to convince the normies. It only took me 2 years ago to realize that I was in a niche within the niche. I hadn't realized that in 22, that like, there's a whole world outside of crypto Twitter. I really thought that, I thought all my friends were going to come to Twitter and be on spaces with us. And,
Do you think, because when I did Decentral Lens with my old buddy Disco, we would do deep dives on certain topics and interview people, but we also did like a weekly news show. And I was always amazed, like the interviews of people and the deep dives on different topics always did better. The news show itself, because I guess maybe it's just the age I am. Like I grew up thinking the news was stupid, but it was almost a fun creating a set, making it like a news set and just giving people the stuff each week. And those shows never quite did the numbers. Maybe X isn't the right platform for that because X is so like ingest it now and move on, like swipe. Even doing a live video stream on X, obviously we stream on YouTube as well, but X maybe not the spot. But news never did as good as the others. Did you find that as well, or do you think there is a ripe opportunity as the normies come in this next cycle, which they haven't done, for a good quality news show?
So I was doing 60-second news skits. So they were short.
Okay.
This was short form content. I was not trying to be in a studio. I was changing. I was in character. Like I'm telling you, I was like Frank D. Gods one day in a black hoodie. And like,
speaking of grift products, there's one right there.
Right.
You don't have to say it. Don't worry, but I will.
But so what it did at the time was solidify me as what the skills I had.
Okay.
The other thing is, I agree with you. I don't think news is the way, but also it's so taxing. Like, and I'll tell you this, people weren't ready to give me sponsorships for that news thing.
Oh.
But what people did want was, hey, Girl in the Verse, can you come host our show? Can you come? And so that was interesting to me. I was like, so to answer your question.
So will you host our show? You know what that's the same thing as saying, hey, we don't want to sponsor your new show as it's growing and it's small. We want you to be the face of our show. Exactly the same thing that the network did to you 10 years ago, right? So it's...
I mean, yes and no. I'll tell you this. I think what it did at the time, because then, then we had people trying to spin off of what I was doing. So like then you got Mika doing her news reports and you got all these other creators trying to do news reports. Of course. I think Gigi was also trying to at some point, right? I think what it was and what I was capturing at the time that I don't think everyone else realized was that niche within the niche. And so when I was putting it on TikTok, people didn't understand the Frank D. Gods joke in the newscast, but we did. So what it did was on Twitter, I grew quickly, but also not as quick. Like I didn't get the 200,000 followers, but I grew quickly at a time where you already had to be showing your boobs to like, get some numbers on the account. So I grew quickly enough to start getting gigs and attention. So Rug Radio picked me up. Gokshi Media picked me up. They all picked me up. They're all like, oh yeah, we need you. But then what I started doing, because then it only took me, the first few years, because then you're in that rat race of like, okay, the news, and you keep doing the same thing because you think it's working. Then what started happening was I was like, wait a second, I gotta go. Like my girlfriends have no idea who Frank D. Gods is. I'm going on Instagram talking about Frank. Like nobody knows who these people are, and these people were nobody, and they still are nobody.
That's so funny you say that because when we did it, looking back, because friends in real life would be like, hey, like I liked you growing up, like let me see your show, and I would send them one, and then I realized I was cherry picking what I'd send them because I'd be like, it was so insider baseball. Like once you get into ordinals and stuff like that, like you either have to go and get people coming into the ballpark where they're brand new, or you just have to accept that, kind of like Blu Node. I love this space. You and I are literally 73 miles down a network of rabbit holes. The normies can't even, there's no reference to even the words we're using.
No.
A curling buddy of mine said it best. He's the funniest comment I've ever heard. I tried to explain, I got Nouns to sponsor my curling club, and he asked me, he goes, Blue, what are these? And I was like, I explained to him crypto and nouns, and I tried to go very slowly. He goes, you just said a lot of words, and a lot of those words I know, but the order in which you said them made absolutely no sense. I was like, what a great way of saying, like, what are you talking about? And so the news that we did, you're right, was it was only accessible to the people who knew more than anybody. You know what I mean? And that's a very small thimble of people.
And look, I'll tell you this. I did garner like a lot of attention, but it wasn't what I was trying to do. And so all this to say is then I pivoted into doing more of the education, like what is Bitcoin? What is Ethereum? Why are you doing this? How do you buy certain things? Then I started doing videos for Ledger, how to take your crypto and put it onto, a Ledger wallet. So I was doing a lot of those types of things.
So they love that. That's what, because you're a good personality, you're smart, but you're also introducing people to a product, and you're doing it better than Ledger could themselves. Let's be honest.
Yes. So I was doing that. And now I would say what I'm leaning in on, and this is what's been really exciting for me to even test this out, is because for the last 7 years, the number one question I actually get from everyone is, what the hell are you doing with this crypto? Like, can you go buy something with it? So, and I couldn't show people that I could. So now I got hands on a couple of different cards that now I can finally go into a grocery store and pay in USDC. So it's been fun for me these last few weeks, Blue Toshi, and this content will be coming out shortly. But now I'm actually starting to look at my content as, what do I want to do for TikTok? And that is a whole other game, my friend. Like,
is TikTok only short for, is that only 30 to 60 seconds?
You can go live. You and I can go and do a live show on TikTok. I think you need to have 1,000 followers though first. But you can go live and you can do a live show, but that's where you're going to get the XRP army coming at you. Just, that's what happens. But we could go live on TikTok.
Okay.
But what I mean,
can we go live horizontally, or does TikTok have to be vertical?
No, vertical.
Has to be vertical. Okay. So whole different vibe.
Whole different vibe. But I've been doing a lot of content lately. Like even, I did this video on Ethereum celebrating its 10 years. And this is where it gets super interesting. I live in Canada. So right now I'm trying to hone in on Canada, crypto. I'm trying to hone in on the geolocalization of what these apps are already doing for us. So to Aaron's point about, TikTok gives me this content. What I started noticing is all the content TikTok feeds me is Canadian content because I live here. So the other thing is, I was able to garner the attention of a lot of American companies because I've been in crypto for 7 years. But the problem is all my content is not reaching Americans, it's reaching Canadians.
So TikTok specifically, and they pick up the algorithms because it's all videos. So they're basically transcribing everything, but they also are geotagging you and stuff like that. And you're saying they really do try and keep it regional. So as crypto goes mainstream, you're like, you know what? I'm in Canada. I'm going to make it accessible for normies, because I know we both know in this next year, 2 or 3 or whatever, the retail and the normies our neighbors at the barbecues are coming back in, and you're saying I'm going to be ready for them, and I'm going to be ready for them locally. I already have a footprint in America. That's great. But with TikToks especially, it really does go more regional. And that may be a huge advantage looking 3-4 years down the line.
Exactly. So, and again, What's been interesting right now is I can actually use a credit card and go to my local grocery
Sure.
store and start paying stuff. And I think for the longest time, my biggest problem when I looked at my content, and I want, like, if you're a content creator, typically a lot of content creators will come and listen to what I have to say. So if you're a content creator, I would say go look at your past stuff and look at it and what could you have done better. And what I noticed over the last 7 years in crypto was, I started out where I felt like I was convincing people, like, you gotta buy Bitcoin, you gotta do this. I was like trying to be Wendy O, like, you gotta. And that was not
And
me.
that's
I don't
and that's also exactly what a normie who's trepidatious isn't going to want to hear, because they're going to be like, well, she's telling me
F
to, but
off.
do I trust
Leave
her?
me alone.
Right.
Exactly. So I started out as being, I'm convincing everyone, because when I got into it, and it's so funny, I was laughing about this the other day. In 21, I was like looking at my husband, I'm like, why didn't we meet earlier? Why didn't you tell me about Bitcoin? Why? Like, I'm so late. And today I'm like, oh my God, we got ways to go, you know?
We're
But all
fine.
this to
Yeah.
say is, I started with the convincing. I'm going to convince people that they need to buy. This is going to change your life. And the truth of the matter is, it's really not going to change people's lives in Canada, because everyone in North America thinks that they made it. They're in the good country. Nothing bad is going to happen to them. And so that was another thought process that I had to deal with. Because to your when we first started this conversation, you were saying, well, Bitcoin's utility and whatnot. I can tell you there are so many people right now that if I tell them, well, you can send this money to Costa Rica for a fraction, they don't give a shit. They're like, I don't send money to Costa Rica. I don't care. It's actually in the third world countries, in the countries where they are fighting to get to the US dollar. That's who actually gives a crap about Bitcoin.
Well,
But
no,
if
but
you're a
actually,
Canadian,
I'm going to correct you there. Guess what?
well, tell me,
Third world countries. Do you know what the number one transaction is? What chain?
what is
It's
it?
Tron, because Tron has the cheapest USD. It has the cheapest tether. The rates are
Yes.
virtually zero. They, like you said, every currency, like we see the US dollar and certainly the Canadian dollar depreciating against Bitcoin, but they
Yeah,
are just trying to get to the US dollar, which is depreciating
exactly.
way slower than their hyperinflationary currency. So they're just trying, like you said, to get into US dollars. So even we, like first world countries, not my term, but even our countries are very myopic, because if you have $1.96 and you want to preserve that and have it be worth $1.96 or more in your local currency, you've got to get it to US dollars. We would say get it to Bitcoin, but a Bitcoin transaction can be 20 cents to a dollar third. Like that's
Exactly.
20% of their, like, so it's all relative where you are, but you're absolutely right. The normies, they're always going to come in at first for FOMO or number go up, and then some, if it's not too volatile, they'll make money and then they'll be hooked, or some will get shaken out yet again and they'll turn into laggards, and then some will stick around, like my friend who got wrecked, but he stuck around, he held his stuff, and now he's up again. So it's like he stayed curious, he stayed into it, and he won, you know?
I think too, like, and I've been doing a lot of this, like, introspection, because I get a ton of people following me. I get people in my city like, oh, I love your content. I'm like, did you buy Bitcoin? They're like, no. And so I'm constantly like, how can you follow me, watch me? And you're like, I'm not. So I always constantly feel like I'm not doing it right. I'm not explaining it right. I'm going to try this again. I'm going to do something else. And every comment I got from people was, I don't see the need for me. I got a 9 to 5. I'm safe. I'm like, okay, they don't understand how the world works.
No.
That's one. Two, everyone's expecting to get retirement money. No one really understands how deep shit we're getting in
Right.
Canada,
Well, and how big
right?
a debt we're in. You're saying Canada is in similar problem.
We're in a really big crisis. And see, I think a lot of people my age in their 30s still feel like this dream of go to school, get a good job,
Right.
retire. They still believe that. They still believe that's the way to go. So I think there's that. And then to add the layer of the female, let's talk about the women right now, because I too was like, I want to onboard all the women. The issue with women right now is that they're also at a stage where if they're having kids, they don't have this. Blue Toshi, like I was on a show the other week. They're like, "How do I buy Bitcoin? Can you teach me?" My question back to them was, "How much time do you have to
Yeah.
study?"
Unless you just start with like a Kraken or a Coinbase and just stack some sats
I
there.
actually I actually tell people to buy it through their bank
Can you? Oh, just like in
because
just you're saying on the ETF or whatever.
like let's be real. These people are not going to be setting up their wallets,
No.
writing down their seed phrase. Like, we're talking about the average Joe who's like, I want to put $10 in
So you're
this.
saying just
Like,
buy a little bit of an ETF and you're good to go.
well, I'm basically trying to tell people, first of all, when people come to me, am I too late? I'm always like, no, you're right on time. This is where you come in because like, I don't
Right.
want to ever discourage anyone. You want to buy Bitcoin at 113,000? I will tell you, buy it
Right,
today. I
dollar
will
and
not
dollar
tell you.
cost. I always tell people dollar cost average in because I
Exactly.
never like, is this the right time to buy? I'm like, it's hard to say. I never know when it's going to retreat or go up. I think over time it's going to go up.
Exactly.
So just slowly put in and slowly learn about it. That's the advice I always
Exactly.
give now.
Exactly. So it's like now's a great time because you're asking, so do it and DCA and let me know what happens. But the other thing too is I try to be very cautious. Like with all of my content, I am never going to tell you buy this coin and base and do this
Right.
and buy this and look at hyper liquid and like because at some point you're just going to look like a grifter. Like you will look like and again, I put on my reporter hat and it's like I rather people ask me, what the hell is she doing? What is she into? Than putting it all out there on the timeline for people to just assume and think this is the right thing. She's telling me to buy this. And
Right.
then tomorrow it disappears. I don't want to be held responsible. I don't want people to say they bought something because of me. So I only stick to Bitcoin when it comes to TikTok and Instagram. You'll see that. I don't really talk about Ethereum or Solana, but I'm in them. But I don't, because again, I'm like the average Joe. It took us
Yeah.
how many years for people to be like, oh, yeah, that's the Bitcoin logo? It took us all that time. So right now, I'm just going to stick to those logos. I'm not going to try to explain to people SUI. Like, it's just, come on. They don't have this time.
So
So,
you're onboarding normies, and I think that's a noble cause because when they're ready, they will
it's
start
very
looking
noble.
into it, and you'll be there to explain it to them in a simple way. Like you said, you've got your places where you can go deeper down rabbit holes, but I think it's definitely a noble cause, and it sounds like you're saying if you do the news, you've got to keep it like super blood simple or your target audience literally goes to smaller and smaller and smaller to like 500 1,000 people.
Even if you were to do a news show and you're like, oh, Coinbase is doing this, like the average Joe has no idea what Coinbase is. Like, I don't think people realize that on crypto Twitter. It's like no one knows who Brian Armstrong is. Like,
Right.
sorry to tell you this, but like
Yeah,
your
100%.
average Joe has no clue who Michael Saylor is. Like, and crypto Twitter's like, oh, she's bearish. It's like, no, it's like I'm telling you this because your average Joe doesn't even know who their local governor is. Like,
Right.
do you really think that they know who Mike, you know what I mean? So it's like you really got to get to people where they're at. That's why I was telling you at the very beginning. It's like I'll look at a couple of people who talk about Bitcoin and Kathy Wood and Kevin O'Leary because at least people kind of seen them. They've seen them around. But like your average Joe is not going to go and like, what is Coinbase and who's Brian Armstrong? What did he do
Right.
at the White House? Like nobody has any clue. Actually, people called me to talk about the Trump coin versus Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
people are
a
like, "Oh, I heard
lot
about
of
this Trump
people knew
coin."
about Trump coin and then Melania coin. Like you're right. This last cycle, that's what everyone was
Yeah.
asking. Did you get into that? I'm like, no. Why are you even asking me? But
Yeah.
that got on their radar because all in the election, all the Democrats were like, this is total grift. And I don't think they were really wrong. Like that was a very strange series of events where you're like, okay, so you're releasing a quarter of it right now, which you probably also hold most of. You're holding back the
For
other
sure.
3 quarters and you're putting it out there. And then Melania got in on it the next day. That was just utterly bizarre. But with his followers, at least until this recent news, like he's been pretty much Teflon, but we'll see what happens. So, Melina, it's been great having you on the show. Is there anything that you know you always want to leave them want more? Is there anything that you want to share with your audience? You can certainly tell people where to follow you, or anything we didn't talk about that was burning hot on your mind right now.
Um, I think right now we're at the part of the cycle where it's going to be very easy to FOMO into things last minute. Like I didn't buy a Pudgy Penguin ever. I love them. I go to all their events. I own a ton of
Right.
plushies, but I just, you gotta figure out what works for you.
Yep.
And I noticed early on, like when I buy art, I have a hard time selling it. So I rather just buy a token. I rather buy something, and I rather make my money elsewhere. I'm actually glad to tell people I will do a video and I don't need I'll gladly work for what it is. So I will tell people, don't FOMO into things now. I think we're a little too late. Like, don't FOMO into stuff that you're gonna see now. Stick to your conviction plays, and take profits this cycle. I want people to take profits. I want to take profits because it's healthy. Um, I also want people to know that this is not a lifestyle. Like grinding on the timeline is not sustainable. So please take profits, enjoy. It's summer, like Blue Toshi did. He took a month off. If you want to, take the month off. But stick to your conviction plays and don't FOMO in. I don't think this is the time to FOMO in.
I think.
And that's it. What else can I say?
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Well, Melina, it was so nice to meet you in person. We've been planning this for a while, and you did not disappoint. You're a wealth of info, and thanks for sharing your backstory. It's absolutely fascinating, and I can tell your husband thank you for getting in the space, because I like your takes, and I like that you're into the brand, but you're also into integrity, because you're right. It's hard to. There's so many products out there. There's so many new things that come out. It's hard to be discerning, because it's easy to jump in the bandwagon to make money here and there. But the more you do, like you said, you might have the best intentions and they might too. And it might be a total flop and someone might be a rugger. And then, that's on you. So you've got to be really protective of who you are in this space and have your convictions and just sometimes touch grass and relax.
Totally.
Awesome. Melina,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Good times. Take care, everybody.